Our final panel is going to feature three of these outstanding young agriculturalists. And to moderate this panel, we're going to introduce Dr. Elizabeth Stulberg. And Dr. Stulberg earned her PhD at the Department of Molecular, Cellular, and Developmental Biology at Yale University. She worked on plant-soil microbe interaction and natural product biochemistry. Now, she worked as a House of Representatives legislative assistant while on a Science and Technology Policy Congressional Fellowship sponsored by the American Society for Microbiology. She then continued to work in science policy with a fellowship in the Office of Science and Technology Policy, sponsored by the American Phytopathological Society. Dr. Stulberg is now OSTIP's Senior Advisor for Food and Life Sciences, working on food and agricultural issues and the microbiome. Please welcome Dr. Elizabeth Stulberg. Okay, so the podium is yours to introduce our young ladies.
I will. Please come up to the stage. So while they're getting settled, I want to take an opportunity to tell you a little bit about myself and what I do before we have these young ladies introduce themselves as well. So I work at the Office of Science and Technology Policy. If you're not familiar with this White House office, what it does is it coordinates science and technology across the federal government. And when I started working there about a year and a half ago on my fellowship, I was the only person in this about 120-person office with an agricultural or even ag policy background, the only one. And I just want to share one story with you before I turn this over to these ladies. I remember one of my first weeks on the job, I saw an email about a bunch of people getting together to talk about drone policy. And I thought, drones, they're so hip and trendy and cool, and farmers are using them, and it's really exciting and really important. So I went to this meeting. It was just kind of a brainstorming kind of meeting, and everyone there was talking about how exciting drones are, and everyone was talking about all the different things that they could do, and not one of them said anything about farming, and I thought that was kind of odd. Again, I'd only been there for about a week. And then one person said, maybe we could do some kind of a pilot program we could have. We're thinking about doing drones like across the nation, different parts of the country. And I said, that's great, like urban, rural. And they said, rural? Why do we need drones on farms? I was like, okay, I see my purpose here. This was an opportunity. So I have made my way through this office, pounding agriculture and the importance of food safety, the importance of farmers to many of the people who work on tech policy, because it's a very tech-heavy office. And what's important about this is that people don't always put agriculture and technology in the same sentence. It should be. Agriculture is science, and it is important, and it's tech-driven. And we need to be responsible for making it seem more that way in the consumer size. And it is something, it's forward-thinking. Most people think of farming, they think something their grandparents did, their great-grandparents did, my great-grandparents did. But this panel today is here to talk about the future of agriculture, and that future is technology-driven, it is interesting, it is remunerative, and it is an excellent career path. And so, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over. So, maybe each of you could speak a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and maybe what about your background has led you into agriculture. So maybe we could start with Jessica.
Well, hi everyone. I'm Jessica Miller from Oklahoma, actually a small town 45 minutes away from where I go to school at, so it's not that far of a drive for me. I was born and raised on a beef cattle farm. We actually raise show cattle in Ponca, and I got started at a young age with my dad because he took me out to go preg check cows and work cows with him and stuff like that. So him and my mom have been the major influences in my life to get started, but I also want to go into ag ed later on, so I want to teach ag and spread the word about how good agriculture is, because I know our youth is our future, and we need to get that word spread to them. So that's kind of how ag has influenced my life.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just first want to say a special thank you to Kay and the Alliance staff for making this summit and especially this panel possible for us to share our thoughts. My name is Jennifer Weinberg. I am a graduating senior at the George Washington University here in Washington, D.C. My roots in agriculture started, I was born and raised on a small beef cattle farm in central New Jersey, which I know a lot of people come to me and say, wait, there's cattle in New Jersey? Yes, there are, and it's been an endeavor that my family and I have kept. My family is a third-generation cattle farmer, so we only have a few show cattle on our property now. I've been involved with 4-H my entire life, but I came to Washington with a really specific goal, which was to find a way to fuse my interest in agriculture and my love for livestock, especially beef cattle, with my interest in pursuing a law degree. And it wasn't long before I arrived in Washington that I realized that there absolutely was going to be a way to do that, seeing as how in just about 3 years here in Washington I've seen so many varied arguments from animal activist groups that are attacking agriculture in legal means and attaching constitutional arguments to why, for example, animals should have personhood rights, and everything they possibly can try to do to undermine animal agriculture they've tried, and they've found the courts of law being a really great way to try to accomplish their set agenda and their goals. So I hope to use a law degree in the future to defend and represent agriculture in legal ways, and that's a little bit about me.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Heather Abeita, and I am from Isleta, New Mexico, and I'm currently a student at New Mexico State University, majoring in agricultural biology, in the hopes of getting into vet school. So hopefully, in maybe 5 years, I'll come back to here and be speaking as one of your veterinarians. I grew up on a small farm in central New Mexico. I was mostly raised around cattle, but I also was very active in both 4-H and FFA, showing everything except chickens, even dogs. But those are my hopes for the future, is to become a veterinarian. And what brought me into being an advocate for agriculture is actually growing up on a Native American reservation. I saw that there was a lot of residential houses being built on the farmland in the area. So I figured, well, okay, well, what's that going to do for the future of agriculture? What's that going to do to the future of farmers? So that's pretty much how I got involved in advocating for agriculture.
Thank you all very much for being here and sharing your experiences with us. I noticed that all three of you have some experience at home with agriculture, grew up on a farm. And, see a lot of kids now who come from farms that do not want to follow in their parents' footsteps. They do not want to go into it themselves. And yet each of you have talked about career paths that aren't necessarily farming. You're talking about ag education, you're talking about law. I'm curious, why do you think so many young people are turned off by farming, or even any of the kind of related careers in agriculture?
One of the main reasons I think that the youth that do not want to come back to their farm is kind of something to do with the labor and the cost of some of the equipment and all that, and some of the I want to call them kids, but sorry. Some of the youth do not want to go back just because they could find better paying jobs elsewhere. That kind of like agriculture education, they could find better jobs paying elsewhere that don't require as much labor, and they probably want to stay away from a lot of the cost. They don't want to share that cost and pay that cost that it takes to maintain a farm. And because we do have equipment the money that it takes to pay for that equipment, it's a lot. So they might not just want to share that debt with that. So.
For me, a few ideas on this that I've had, and I think it's a theme that we've discussed a little bit in different areas of today, and it's probably a theme I'll return to, is there's a certain narrative that goes along on continuing the family farm. I think that in agriculture and discussing, certain elements and areas of agriculture, there is various narratives that are put out. And I think that one narrative in relation to agriculture is this notion of the American dream. There's notions that we want better lives for our children than we have. So how can you possibly achieve that by just continuing in what your father did on the family farm? I think that there's certain emotions and certain parts of the story of just continuing on the family farm that make going to cities to pursue, a law degree or pursue another career more glamorous, or with more opportunities to explore the unknown rather than just staying where you are and staying complacent in that role.
I also agree with Jennifer with that being said. I believe in our generation, we mostly grew up with a lot of technology, social media. So we also grew up watching a lot of the celebrities. A lot of our generation, I have noticed, is that we want to be rich and famous. And it seems like for most of our generation, they want that same dream. They want to be Kim Kardashian or some kind of, maybe not Kim Kardashian, but some kind of celebrity with being rich and famous. So they don't want to get dirty. They're like, dirt, ew, no. Back to the farm, no, it's okay. I'll just work in an office all day where it's nice and cool. It'll be okay. So I think that's where we kind of have a little go into a problem with that aspect, is that they don't want to work on the farm because it's not so glamorous. They want to have more of a comfortable life elsewhere.
So Heather, I'll follow up with that. A lot of the things that we've been talking about today have been ways where farmers or the farm community can reach out to consumers, but also just the general public via social media to get a message out, whatever that message is. And we've talked about a bunch of different ones. In terms of the messages that agriculture, especially animal agriculture, is important, and maybe a good career path or a good career path, or maybe just making consumers better informed, do you think a celebrity endorsement, or what kinds of social media do you think would best influence young people?
I think a celebrity endorsement would definitely be good for agriculture, but I also think education is very important to get them noticed for agriculture. In New Mexico, and I'm sure in other states, we have ag in the classroom that's very popular. They try to go talk to elementary students, middle school students, and we also have FFA in high school as well too. But if we could just possibly start talking to the younger generation and get the word out to them more, that way they can maybe possibly grasp the idea of agriculture, and there's possibilities for a career in agriculture.
Just to kind of follow up on that point, I definitely agree. However, I think it's something we've discussed a little bit before, but I think it's really important to mention again, is that in terms of outreach on social media platforms and things, the reason we have to be there is that's where everyone else is. And further, that's where the activists are. So in talking about, for example, celebrity endorsements, I think Carrie Underwood is one of those examples where she's come out on Twitter and on her Facebook and Instagram advocating for a vegan lifestyle because that's what she follows, specifically when a state was currently battling in court over a supposed ag gag, or what I call a farm protection bill. She came out on Twitter, advocating for the governor to veto the bill, or for the court to overturn it because it was awful and it was, preventing animal abuse from being exposed. So I think examples like that just fuel activist campaigns that are already strong. So I think our response, plain and simple, needs to be, we need to fight fire with fire. We need to continue to do so. We need to use the strategy and the rhetoric, not exactly the rhetoric, but we need to turn the rhetoric of activists around, and we need to counteract it, because as of right now, as it sits, activist groups are louder, they're proud, they're louder, and they're effective. So we need to shut that down in our own way by taking what they do and then using it for our advantage.
I'm going to kind of follow up on what Jennifer said about Carrie Underwood. That hits home for me just because she's from Oklahoma, and I actually went to school not far from her. So it kind of it hits home, and it kind of hurts a little bit just to hear that one of my own is against agriculture. So if we have a celebrity that speaks out and says that, yes, I support agriculture, agriculture is great because we need to eat to live, and without agriculture we'll not survive. So if somebody can see that and say, hey, they're supporting agriculture, I will too, and at least give the facts out, because like Jennifer said, everybody's on the social media website. Everybody's on social media anymore. You can't find anybody that's not on there, except for my dad. Sorry, Dad. So if we can fight fire with fire and tell them the facts, use what we are learning now to hit the major media channels, then I think more people will understand that agriculture is good and social media is a great way to start, but I also think we need to go higher than that.
Also, with that being said, one of my good friends is a vegetarian, and I try to speak of my background, of my agriculture background to her. And I remember a conversation we had. I was telling her what farmers do, what ranchers do, and why we need to do it. And she's like, oh, really? Well, I didn't know you guys did that. And she also told me that on their PETA site, that they focus on teenagers more so than any other age group. So with that being said, I see how the younger generation are vegetarians or want to have that bad look on agriculture is possibly because PETA focuses on the younger generation.
So maybe I should ask, what kinds of stories or images or information should be out there? What should we be saying to target teenagers, to target young people?
As the story wise, anything that has to do with something that's involved in their daily lives. Speaking of the PETA thing, most girls wear makeup, right? Telling the teenagers, because some of them are starting to wear makeup and starting to want to look pretty and stuff like that. We actually had PETA come to our campus once, and we showed them all of the products that have animal products in them, including makeup. So telling that story of, hey, your makeup has animal products in it. You don't have vegan mascara. So, kind of telling that story, and then telling personal experiences that this is why we do that, this is why we give antibiotics to our animals and stuff like that, but something that kind of piques their interest as a teenager, because we were all teenagers once, and we know what piques our interest. And telling them some personal stuff that we were once like you, but we're still Aggies, and so we this is why we do that, so where they can understand exactly where we're getting at.
One of my favorite PR campaigns that activists like to push is what's called Open the Barns, where they say, there's no reason you should be, criticizing us for illegally trespassing on your property and violating the law and taking videos. What's wrong with that? And so my idea is, if they want the barns open, we should open them, but on our terms, not on theirs. So, for instance, I think the narrative, the stories, the connection that needs to be drawn between from farm to table is what goes on farm operations on a daily basis. So show pictures of, the pigs being, fed off their mom. Show the pictures of, the dairy cows being milked. Show it aesthetically in a way that people can kind of visually see and then emotionally connect. Because I think activist arguments, political arguments, any kind of persuasion uses two things majorly, which is emotion and visuals. People love to see things, that seeing is believing, and more importantly, everyone has the capacity to feel emotion and draw opinion based on what it looks like. So I think we really need to be careful to craft our narratives and craft what we're showing people to show the truth of what we do and how our animals are treated. And therefore, if we open the barns and say, hey PETA, hey ASPCA, look, we've opened our barns, check it out. Over time, if we as a community, all members of animal livestock industries, go ahead and do this, then the activist arguments in some ways become mute. I won't sit up here and say that's going to solve the problem entirely, because there's always going to be something, and they're always going to try to make arguments, but the best thing that we can do is try to discredit them before they even start, or if they have started, do our best to essentially make sure that, we shut them down as effectively as possible.
I'm going to go, sorry, Heather. I'm sorry. I'm going to go along with what Jen said. People don't like what they don't understand. So if we can open our barn doors and show them how we do things and show them that our animals aren't abused and that they're treated better than some people in the nation, I think they will have a better understanding of that we are not here to harm our animals. If we harm our animals, that affects us, and we don't want that. So we all want to have our animals healthy and alive and producing for us, because thank God for them. So if they weren't here, we wouldn't be in business.
I agree with everything you guys said. But also, besides that, I think that social media has a strong point in getting across to the younger generation, of course, because we're always on our phone. My dad always tells me to get off my phone. But also just, we're visuals, so we like a pretty picture. Everybody likes a cute little baby calf. I know for one of my ag classes back at NMSU, I posted a picture of one of my bulls where I just got done grooming him, and he has a look of, are we done yet? Like the lazy eye look. And that was my hashtag that I put as "Are we done yet?" And I got a lot of likes on it, and maybe along with that you could write, "Did you know something about cattle?" Which that was one of our tasks as being an online Aggie as well for our assignments.
So I'm going to direct this next question first to Jennifer. I'm going to pick on you because I am also from New Jersey. Okay. I did not grow up on a farm. I grew up in a very suburban area. We didn't have agriculture in schools. There was no ag educator. I didn't learn anything about where my food came from except for the grocery store. And so we've also talked a little bit, some of the speakers have mentioned those aha moments where, the guy comes up and says, "Pet the horse," and it's a cow. And I feel like I've had those moments when I go back home and talk about anything to do with agriculture, whether it's wait, you think that's what organic means? To anything. And I'm curious if you've also had those experiences, those wait a minute, not on the same page moments, and how you deal with them, and how you think the industry could deal with them.
I apologize in advance to anyone I've spoken with today or yesterday evening that's heard this anecdote, but I think I have to tell it again because it really just speaks to me and answers this question just so well. So last week I presented my senior thesis, in which I'm a political communications major, so I look at politics, I look at the media, and I chose to analyze how the media covers what is called the ag-gag debate. I call it farm protection. And what I found essentially is that there is significantly less coverage, defending agriculture than there is, affirming activist claims. And then, so that's about 50% of affirming activist claims, and 50% is just balanced coverage. So I was explaining the background of what the ag-gag debate is all about to my classmates at GW, most of which are from urban areas. None of which, besides me, grew up on a farm, and so in order to adequately discuss what my thesis was about, I had to mention what are these undercover videos and what are they showing. So I pulled up on the screen what was, I think, PETA's most, emphasized undercover video, which was a picture of a dairy cow being held, moved with a skid steer tractor in a slaughterhouse, and, it was the activist claim that look at how awful these animals are treated, like garbage and things. So I said, well, this is what, the activists have to say about it. But I said, I've lived on a cattle farm for 20 years. And unfortunately, my family and I have experienced instances where our cattle have gotten hurt, broken limbs, and unfortunately had to be put down and, ethically slaughtered. So we always obviously ethically slaughter our cattle, but sometimes that time comes earlier or in a way that we, would rather it didn't. So we have options. So I asked my classmates, how much do you think this particular cow in the video weighs? And I got, 500, 600. I said, well, this particular cow in my experience of 20 years probably weighs about 1,300 to 1,500 pounds. and it has a broken limb, and it's scared, and it's hurt, and we need to take care of it as quickly as possible. And I asked the class again, so how would you suggest we move this particular animal into an area where it could be ethically slaughtered, besides, using some sort of machine? And nobody could give me an answer. So I said, so in this instance, is it possible technically for, horrible abuse to be happening of this downed animal? Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say it never happens anywhere, anytime, because that would just be foolish. But what I did say is, this, to me, in my experience, speaks to an animal that has injured itself and needs to be ethically slaughtered and to be put out of its misery. So this is the way that we have to deal with this. Is it the prettiest example? Is it pleasant? Is it happy-go-lucky? No, but it's reality of what happens. And this is the story sometimes of how our food arrives at our table. And one girl raises her hand, and she's from Los Angeles. She's like, I've never stepped foot on a farm before, but I never thought of that. So that, to me, when I was just sitting up here presenting my thesis, I said, well, that's an aha moment if I've ever had one. And I think, we've talked a lot about how we can better educate people. I think that's absolutely part of the deal. Yeah, you can't just put pretty pictures up there with no basis and no support for what you're saying. So I think the industries going forward really need to balance not having too much information just thrown at you. They need to balance the narrative that uses emotion and visuals like activist groups do, while also putting the facts out there. And I think that, like some certain politicians that we've seen that have made their ideas and their points very short, sweet, to the point, let's make agriculture great again, I think that's what we essentially need to do on an ongoing basis. And it's going to be trial and error and experimentation, but we have the resources to do so. I apologize for my really long answer.
Do either of you have those aha moment stories?
I work at a dairy farm at Oklahoma State University, and I've been there for about 4.5 years. And of course, you get everybody on a school farm coming up to you and asking you questions. It's kind of the similar. I actually had a group from Kenya the other day. I think it was like last week sometime. And they asked me multiple questions, and they were actually very precise and very good answers. And questions. I gave them good answers. I tried. But they did ask me if I got multiple questions about, well, why do you take the calves away from the cows? And all I can see there is that just give them the facts, and I just told them this is why we do this. This is the ethical way of doing this. This is why. But going into another story, a long time ago, my father actually you got to milk cows at the Oklahoma State Fair. It was a long time ago. They don't do it anymore. But he was there, and he was helping people milk cows. And ladies like me would come up in high heels and milk cows. And other people would just be, ew. And there was also bulls around, too. I think they were probably beef bulls. And these people came up and said, well, why don't you milk that one? And pointed at the bull. And so that's kind of an aha moment that I got from my dad, because that's just one of those things, well, how do you explain that to somebody who doesn't major in animal science? So, but that's one of my aha moments, because we need to educate. I mean, even though it might be not what they want to hear sometimes, but we need to educate them, just because, okay, that you can't milk that might kick you. So.
I think we know a lot more than we do know a lot more than we realize. And so when we have questions asked by the public who never have stepped foot on a farm, they're just general questions like, oh, well, is that a bull? No, that's a heifer. It's just the general questions to the population like that, where I've had just general questions asked that are common that we would know, but just the general public don't know that you have your aha moments.
So that actually is a great segue into my next question, which I'm going to direct towards Jessica first, because it has to do with ag education. It seems to me like the three of you, when you're talking about your experiences and how you interact with other people, you're talking about, you're really drawing from your past. You're drawing from your experience on the farm. But as an ag educator, we're talking about a more academic curricula. And all three of you have also had experience in school learning about the academic side of animal science or animal biology. So I'm curious, when you, do you find that you draw more on your experience from your own personal growing up experience or the academic experience when you're talking to other people who don't have any background on this? And it seems to, this is kind of a loaded question because it seems to me it's your personal experience. And if that's the case, then how can agriculture education give other students who don't have your experiences that kind of resources, those kind of resources to draw from?
That is a great question. And actually, I'm just going to say it's a little bit of both of my past and my education. I can't tell you off the top of my head just details, but people they like experiences. If you can tell them, well, I've been there and I was doing that, and then also tell them, well, and because of this, there's studies that show that this has happened. So I think of a good way to kind of lead into that in being able to teach youth that are not involved in agriculture. I think as an ag educator, I would like to take them to these places and show them, because I know that we've got Brahms in Oklahoma. I don't know if anybody's heard of Brahms, but we've got Brahms in Oklahoma. They allowed farm visits. So taking the youth on a field trip like that to farms and allowing them to see what's going on and teaching them the facts while they're there would be a great way to, and then also telling them, I was once a dairy kid at one time. I was on a dairy. I also raised this, and this. So they'll know that, okay, we're learning, but she's also been there too, so we can ask her. And if they want to get involved later on in certain projects and stuff, then they can ask me or go and, ask whoever they want to and go there. But learning and the past experiences all together is, I think, a great way to just kind of get them to absorb all of that.
Get students onto the farms. Yeah. Do you have anything you'd like to add, either Jennifer or Heather?
I think that it's really important going forward for all of us, but especially those being interested in entering careers in animal ag like Jess. So thank you for that, because we need that and it's very important. I think it's going to be a balance of using hands-on experience and personal experience in telling the story and educating students, as well as using the science and using the strict academic things in order to really well educate people about agriculture, because like I said before, we need to balance the usage of just here's the facts thrown in your face with the hands-on experience. So if we can have a generation of individuals that goes, well, I learned in school that we use gestation crates because hogs might attack each other and could potentially hurt or kill each other because when they're pregnant and things like that. And then you take a trip to a hog farm that uses gestation crates, and you can see, the babies feeding off their mom, and that, the hogs are, grunting, they're all happy and things, that, maybe the activist argument then that we shouldn't be using gestation crates and they're these horrible apparatuses that torture animals, that's not going to resonate with them because they know better. So I think the combined approach is really what we need going into the future.
I agree that we need the combined approach as well, just because we relate to our past experiences because we've been there, we've went through it, we know how it is, so I think that's why we go back to our past experiences, is because we know how it is, but it's also good to learn something new, and also the education aspect as well.
Another thing going into the combined education and experiences, if you can teach them in the classroom and then kind of later apply that, I think that's kind of a great way to get that and instill that into the young minds, because that's kind of how I learned, because I'm a visual person as well. So if I learned that in the classroom and then we went later on and applied it kind of like a lab, but to just go on a field trip and show them everything that you just explained in class, I think that's a great way to kind of get them to remember that and get it in their head, because then they'll remember that experience and know that whatever we taught them and whatever we told them, and then they can apply that later and just remember it for future use.
So we've covered things like getting students onto farms and social media tips already. But I think I'm going to ask you one more question before I turn over to the audience, because I bet they've got questions for you too. But I'm going to take my time and use one more. I think it's really easy to say that it's the fault of the uninformed or the consumer that doesn't know any better, that the information is out there and they could find it if they wanted to. But you know, the theme of this summit is taking action, and so I'd like to give each of you the opportunity. If you could tell the leaders in the field of animal agriculture what kinds of actions should they be taking, what would you say?
First and foremost, whenever somebody approaches you, just give them, if they want transparency, give them the transparency, but tell them, that we aren't here to harm anything. We love animals just as much as anybody else, and they're here to produce for us, and so if we don't produce and we don't help them and keep them healthy, then, it hurts us. Also, I think social media is a big deal. We've talked a lot about that today, and that's going to be the main focus, and getting word out there is getting things posted on social media that are correct and that are accurate. And also, I think since we're talking about media, I would like to see agricultural things on like large-scale media channels, like CNN or anything like that. I know that's asking a lot, but sometimes we just kind of preach to the choir, and we don't really want to do that because we need more people to understand that and know that. So that's kind of a way to kind of take action and get out there. There might be a lot of hoops to jump. I don't understand how many hoops there are to get through, but I know we can do it because we've got the money and we've got the backing and we've got the support, I'm hoping. So if we can get out there and get our word out there and tell everybody that, agriculture is awesome. Without it, starvation sucks. So if we can get that out there, then that would be great.
Yeah, when was the last time there was a positive news story about the food industry on CNN, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
So I'm going to answer this in regards to my education and what I've learned from living in Washington these last 3 years. And it's something I believe that was mentioned on a panel earlier this morning or this afternoon. And I think that as industries, it's important to continue what I say, fighting the good fight, and, engaging directly with the elected officials that create the policy, support the policy, or in some instances, defeat the policy that strengthens and continues to protect our industries. But I think that on a more personal level, the theme of the summit, like was mentioned, it's action please. I think that, above anything else, the more cynical view of politics is that at the end of the day, elected officials, they want to hear what their constituents want to say because they want to be able to make them happy enough so that they can continue to be elected and reelected. So I think that if all of us as a community come together and take individual action, engage with our local representatives, send letters, call your congressman's office. It may be a pesky task. You may feel that it doesn't make a difference, but from being good friends with legislative aides on the Hill, being an intern on the Hill, all of this is documented, and at bare bones minimum, this analysis is being used by political campaigns, by re-election campaigns. If enough of our voices are heard the same thing over and over and over again, our voices then become louder than those of the activists that want to shut down agriculture. And if we can keep politically, from my experience, keep engaging our officials, just every little bit counts, then I think that is the way we can continue to take the most action, because at the end of the day, we can try to appeal to people based on emotions, average citizens, and there's just some people we're not going to be able to sway. But I think the one thing that is essential is that we make sure that our elected officials and our politicians are on the side of protecting agriculture and our industries.
I think that with our leaders today, they're very important for the decisions they're going to make today. It will impact us tomorrow. So I think with everything they said, education is a big deal, not only for our youth, but also for our leaders. I think our leaders need to be well educated in the agriculture industry, and make sure that they know us And we also keep our doors open for them and just make sure we answer their questions. And of course we will, but just keep our doors open so that way that they are more educated in making the choices for today and tomorrow.
Well, before we open up for questions, I'd just like to give a round of applause for these ladies. Thank you so much.
First, Jennifer, do you have an internship this summer yet?
Well, thank you for asking. I've actually accepted a job for after I graduate next week, and I'm really excited. But again, I'm always looking for ways to stay involved in agriculture, especially being in Washington. So I'm a big Ag Chat supporter, and I think that down the line for my career, it's going to be essential to stay in contact with everyone from every industry. So thank you for asking.
Thank you. I do have another question.
Oh, good.
So I happen to own the domain openbarndoors.com.
Good.
If I were to hand it to the three of you, hypothetically, what would you do with it?
Well, for starters, I think that there is such a great network that I know the Alliance, in my experience, is an intern with them, and I think as our industries have pulled together of all these farmers and ranchers from all over the country, I think we really need, I would take the approach of first gathering these members together and having them send in photos and materials that they have, because from our experience, like, everyone has them. They have these pictures, they have these visuals, they have these stories. So I think that for starters, what we need to do is collect all of these materials and then showcase them. Opening the barn doors. Okay, well, we're going to open the barn doors. You know, you could do so much with websites now. It's phenomenal. It goes even over my head. I think I know what I'm doing. I go on to, restructure my blog, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, what is all of this? So it changes quickly, but changes for the better in that we can just provide so much information in so many intricate and detailed ways that are really fun, interactive, they engage people, they get people, involved emotionally. So I think there's just a lot we can do. I think the first step, though, is to gather the materials together and to be able to paint a landscape and a narrative of all industries, what American agriculture looks like. Because I think that's the misconception that people, they don't know. What does American agriculture look like? So when they go on Google and, they type it in, what comes up? Snapshots of undercover videos are really, dramatized with the dramatic music, Sarah McLachlan, dark shading over the animals, life is horrible. I mean, that's what they get. So I think, again, thank you for owning that domain, because I think that's brilliant. I think that there's so much you can do there. I'd love to discuss it with you and see what's already been done. But I think that there's great steps that can be taken and that will be taken.
And I kind of agree 100% with Jen, because we are in the age of technology, so I know that there's possibilities for virtual tours, and I've been to nice farms, and I know they're out there, and I believe that, like Jen said, we can send in that information and disprove that all of, whatever the undercover videos show, that all of our farms are not very nice and not very humane. I would like to disprove that by showing them that, yes, we have humane farms, we have nice, beautiful farms, that are gorgeous and absolutely just wonderful to be around, and very humane and very safe and very clean. And I'd love to just send them in and do that open barn doors.
I also agree with everything they said. I think if we just posted videos of showing the public of what we do on a daily basis and just educating the public of who we are and what we do on a daily basis would help a lot as well too.